She thought she was getting married. Turns out she was just the final signature on a business deal that had been negotiated behind her back for months. This is the story of Amara, a woman who discovered that her wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a corporate merger where she was both the asset and the fool who signed the papers without reading the fine print. If you've ever felt like something was too good to be true, if you've ever wondered why someone seemed more interested in what you could offer than who you were, you need to hear what happened when Amara finally read the contract of her own marriage. Hit that subscribe button because this story will change how you look at love, marriage, and the difference between someone who wants to build with you versus someone who wants to buy you. My people, gather close. Let me tell you about a woman who thought she was walking toward love, but found herself trapped in a boardroom painted to look like a bedroom. Her name was Amara Okafor, and she was 28 when Chike Nwankwo entered her life like morning sunshine after a long harmattan. But sometimes, my friends, what looks like sunlight is just fire dressed up to fool you. Picture this. Amara had built something beautiful with her own hands. A catering business that started in her mother's kitchen and grew into something that fed Lagos society's biggest celebrations. Politicians, business moguls, socialites, they all wanted Amara's jollof rice, her perfectly seasoned goat meat, her legendary chin-chin that melted in your mouth like sweet promises. She was proud of what she'd built. Proud of the way she could turn simple ingredients into memories that lasted longer than the events themselves. Proud of her client list that read like a who's who of Nigerian influence. And then Chike walked into her life, 6 feet tall, soft-spoken, with hands that knew how to hold hers just right. He brought her orchids, not roses like other men, because he said she was rare, not common. When he spoke, it was with the kind of confidence that made you lean in closer, made you feel chosen just by being in his presence. Your father spoke highly of your intelligence, he told her parents during their first formal meeting. The meeting that would determine whether their families would align, whether this courtship would move from private conversations to public announcements. But later, when they were alone, walking through her father's compound under stars that seemed to bless their connection, he whispered something different. Your mind is what drew me to you. Your beauty is just the sweet bonus. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? In a world where men often saw successful women as threats to their ego, here was someone who celebrated her achievements, who asked detailed questions about her business strategies, who seemed genuinely fascinated by her plans for expansion. For 6 months, Chike was everything a woman could want. He remembered the name of her favorite palm wine seller, an old man in Surulere who made the kind of palm wine that tasted like weekend mornings and grandmother's stories. He brought her imported fabrics from Dubai, Ankara prints so beautiful they made other women stop and ask where she shopped. But more than the gifts, he listened, really listened. When she talked about her dreams of expanding her catering business across West Africa, when she shared her vision of training other young women to become entrepreneurs, when she spoke about the restaurant she wanted to open where traditional Nigerian cuisine would be elevated to fine dining status. When we marry, he would say, his voice warm with what seemed like genuine excitement, we'll build an empire together. Your creativity, my resources, your vision, my connections. Amara would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, hardly believing her luck. Here was a man who saw her as a partner, not a possession. Someone who wanted to amplify her dreams, not diminish them. Her mother would click her tongue approvingly whenever Chike's name came up in conversation. This one has sense, my daughter. He sees your worth. He's not one of these small boys who wants to marry you and put you in a cage. Her father, too, seemed genuinely pleased with the match. Chike understands business, he would say. He knows that a smart woman is an asset, not a liability. But my people, sometimes what looks like gold is just brass painted to shine. And sometimes the person who says they want to lift you up is really just calculating the best angle from which to knock you down. The proposal came during the dry season when Lagos heat made everything shimmer like a mirage. Chike had arranged a small gathering at a restaurant overlooking the lagoon, with both families present. When he knelt down with the ring, a beautiful sapphire surrounded by diamonds, Amara felt like she was living in one of those Nollywood movies where everything worked out perfectly in the end. "Amara," he said, his voice carrying over the water and the soft sounds of evening celebration, "will you build this life with me? Will you be my partner in everything?" Partner. That word made her heart race with possibility. She said yes, of course. The families erupted in celebration. Plans immediately began for what would become the wedding of the season. And through it all, Amara noticed something that should have been a warning sign, but seemed like consideration at the time. Chike was very interested in the business side of their upcoming union. He asked detailed questions about her client contracts, her supplier relationships, her father's distribution network that had helped her business grow so quickly. "I want to understand everything about your world," he would say when she mentioned a particularly lucrative catering contract. "How can I support you if I don't know how your success was built?" It seemed romantic. It seemed smart. It seemed like the kind of thorough approach that successful couples took to merging their lives. The wedding planning consumed 6 months of their lives, and what a wedding it was shaping up to be. 300 guests, a live band flown in from Ghana, enough jollof rice to feed Onitsha market. Amara's dress was a masterpiece, hand-beaded George fabric that caught light like captured starfire. But during those 6 months, something subtle began to change. Chike started making suggestions about her business that felt less like support and more like direction. He introduced her to better suppliers who happened to be his connections. He recommended new contracts with companies that she later learned had ties to his family's business empire. "I'm just trying to help you scale faster," he would say when she hesitated about some of these changes. "You've built something beautiful, but imagine what we could accomplish together." The changes seemed logical, his connections were impressive, the new contracts were indeed more lucrative, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, Amara began to feel like she was being managed rather than supported. Still, she pushed those feelings aside. This was pre-wedding stress, she told herself. This was the normal process of two independent people learning to function as a unit. The wedding day arrived like a festival. Everything Lagos society talks about for months afterward. Amara felt like a queen in her George wrapper, surrounded by the joy of families united, friends celebrating. A community witnessing what seemed like the perfect love story. As she danced with her new husband, their bodies moving to high-life music that made the night feel eternal, she whispered in his ear, "I love you so much it frightens me." Chike smiled and held her closer, but if you had looked carefully, and only Amara's sharp-eyed grandmother did, you would have seen that his smile never quite reached his eyes. You would have noticed the way he looked over Amara's shoulder during their first dance, making eye contact with her father and nodding slightly, as if confirming that a transaction had been completed successfully. The honeymoon was supposed to be 2 weeks in Dubai. 2 weeks of luxury, privacy, and the beginning of their life as husband and wife. For the first few days, it felt like everything Amara had dreamed of. They shopped in gold souks, ate at restaurants where the view cost more than most people's monthly salary, made love with the passion of people who believed they had found their forever person. But on the third night, something shifted. Amara couldn't sleep. The time difference, the rich food, the overwhelming reality of being married, it all combined to keep her mind racing. She made chamomile tea in their hotel suite's kitchenette, thinking she had read for a while until sleep found her. That's when she heard Chike's voice coming from the balcony. He was on a phone call, speaking in low tones that carried the weight of serious business. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but something about his tone, formal, calculating, completely different from the warm voice he used with her, made her pause. "The merger is complete," he was saying. "Her father's distribution network is now under our control. The catering contracts from his political connections, yes, all transferred to Nwankwo Industries as discussed." Amara's teacup slipped from her hands. The crash echoed through the quiet suite like a gunshot. Chike turned around, his phone still pressed to his ear. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass doors, and Amara saw something in his expression that she had never seen before. Not guilt exactly, more like mild annoyance at being overheard. "Who were you talking to?" she asked when he came back inside, her voice barely a whisper. "Just business, my love. You know how it is. Even on honeymoon, some things can't wait." "Go back to sleep." But sleep had abandoned Amara forever. She lay in their king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying those words. Her father's distribution network is now under our control. Her distribution network, the one she had built relationship by relationship, contract by contract, success by success. The next morning, she tried to act normal. They went sightseeing, ate breakfast overlooking the Persian Gulf, took the kind of photos that would make their wedding album look like a fairy tale. But every smile felt painted on, every laugh felt rehearsed. When they returned to Lagos, Amara started paying attention, really paying attention. Every family gathering became a business meeting. Her father and new father-in-law would disappear into studies to discuss ventures and opportunities. Her mother and mother-in-law would plan dinner parties that seemed designed to introduce Chike to Amara's most important clients. Every romantic dinner included Chike's phone buzzing with urgent calls that always seemed to involve her business contacts. Her catering company, which she had built with her own sweat, her own late nights, her own creative vision, was quietly being absorbed into her husband's corporate empire. "It makes sense," Chike explained when she questioned the paperwork that kept appearing for her signature. "We're married now. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. This is just making everything official, protecting us both legally." But Amara noticed something that chilled her. Her assets were becoming ours, while his remained firmly his. Her business bank accounts were being merged into joint accounts that he controlled. Her supplier contracts were being renegotiated under the Nwankwo Industries umbrella. Her employees were being slowly transitioned to his payroll. When she expressed concern, Chike had explanations for everything. Logical explanations, financially sound explanations. Explanations that made her feel foolish for questioning such obvious business sense. "You're thinking too small, Amara," he would say with the patient tone of a teacher instructing a slow student. "This isn't about losing control, it's about scaling what you've built into something much bigger." But bigger for whom? The final truth came 6 months after their wedding, during a family meeting she wasn't supposed to attend. She had returned early from the market, her arms full of ingredients for a dinner party they were hosting that evening. The house was quiet except for voices coming from Chike's study. She was about to call out a greeting when she heard her own name. "The girl is smart," her father was saying. "She's starting to ask questions about the contract transfers." Amara froze, grocery bags still in her hands. "Don't worry," came Chike's voice, casual and confident. "By the time she figures it out completely, it'll be too late. The businesses are fully merged now, the contracts transferred. She can't leave without losing everything she built." "I feel guilty sometimes," her father admitted, and Amara could hear the shame in his voice. "She really thinks he loves her." "Love?" Chike laughed. A sound like breaking glass. "Love doesn't secure distribution channels across West Africa. Love doesn't give us access to political connections that took her decades to build. This marriage does." There was a pause, then her father-in-law's voice. "The girl has been useful, I'll give her that. Her reputation for quality opened doors that money alone couldn't." "Exactly," Chike agreed. "And now all those doors are ours. She can keep cooking if she wants. Women like having their little hobbies. But the real business, the real money, that's handled by people who understand strategy." Amara pressed her back against the wall outside the study, grocery bags forgotten at her feet. 28 years of life, and she had never felt so small. So foolish, so completely, utterly betrayed. She had been played, not just by her husband, but by her own father, the man who had raised her to be strong, independent, successful. He had sold her success to secure his own business interests. That night, Amara waited until Chike came to bed. She was sitting in the dark, already dressed in day clothes instead of nightgown. "I heard everything," she said simply. Chike didn't even try to deny it, didn't pretend to be surprised or ask what she meant. He just sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. "What do you want me to say, Amara? That I'm sorry? I'm not. This arrangement benefits everyone. Everyone except me. You have a beautiful home, financial security, social status that most women would kill for. But I don't have love. I don't have a husband. I have a business partner who shares my bed and lies to my face. She stood up slowly, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. You want to know the funny thing, Chike? If you had just been honest, if you had said, let's build something together as equal partners, I might have said yes. I'm a businesswoman too. I understand strategic alliances, but you made me feel like a fool for believing in love. Chike's face hardened. You're being dramatic. This is how successful marriages work. You think love pays the bills? You think romance builds empires? I think respect does, Amara replied. I think honesty does. I think partnership does, and we have none of those things. From that night forward, Amara began planning her exit with the same methodical approach she had used to build her business. She didn't make scenes, she didn't throw plates or curse or beg. She simply began building her freedom one careful step at a time. She consulted lawyers, quietly, paying in cash, meeting in offices across town where no one from her social circle would see her. She documented everything, every contract transfer, every asset merger, every piece of paperwork that had been signed for their mutual benefit. She discovered that her father, perhaps driven by guilt, had kept some assets in her name alone. Properties purchased before her marriage, savings accounts that predated her relationship with Chike, client relationships that existed independently of family connections. She quietly contacted her old clients, the ones who had hired her for her food, not her husband's connections. She began rebuilding her supplier relationships under her maiden name. She researched commercial properties where she could start fresh. It took 3 months to build her exit strategy. 3 months of smiling at dinner parties while planning her escape. 3 months of lying next to a man who had lied to her about everything that mattered. On a Tuesday morning in Lagos, while Chike was in his study taking one of his endless business calls about ventures that had once been hers, Amara served him with divorce papers along with his breakfast. The papers were laid out neatly beside his plate of fried plantain and scrambled eggs, as if divorce were just another item on the morning menu. "What is this?" he asked, though his tone suggested he knew exactly what it was. "You can keep the merger," Amara said calmly, pouring herself coffee with hands that didn't shake. "But I'm taking back myself." "You can't be serious. You'll lose everything." "No," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "I already lost everything the day I believed your lies. This is me getting something back." The legal battle that followed was vicious. Chike and both fathers tried everything: financial pressure, social ostracism, threats about her reputation in Lagos business circles. But Amara had learned something important about herself during those months of planning. She was stronger than anyone had given her credit for. Including herself, she moved into a modest apartment in Surulere, not far from where her business had first started. She began cooking again, not for political gatherings or corporate events, but for people who appreciated food made with love instead of strategy. The new restaurant was smaller than her dreams had once been, but it was entirely hers. Every recipe, every supplier relationship, every business decision flowed from her vision, not someone else's corporate expansion plan. My people, I saw Amara just last month at Balogun Market. She was negotiating the price of yams for her restaurant, laughing with the trader about his attempts to overcharge her, comfortable in her own skin in a way I had never seen during her marriage. A young man was helping her load her car with produce, and when I asked her about him, her face lit up with genuine happiness. "This one sees me," she said, watching him arrange vegetables with careful attention. "Not my business potential, not my family connections, not what I can do for his career, just me." And you know what? That's enough. I watched her drive away, and I thought about the difference between love and transaction, between partnership and ownership, between someone who wants to build with you and someone who wants to buy you. So remember this, my children, when someone wants to marry you, watch their eyes. Do they light up when they see you, or when they see what you can do for them? Pay attention to how they talk about your successes. Do they celebrate them, or do they immediately start planning how to improve them? Do they ask how they can support your dreams, or do they assume your dreams should change to fit their plans? Love should feel like coming home, not like signing a contract you weren't allowed to read. And if you ever find yourself in Amara's shoes, if you wake up one day and realize you've become a supporting character in your own life story, remember that it's better to start over with truth than to live comfortably with lies. Because you, my dear ones, are worth more than any merger. Your heart is not a business deal, your love is not a strategic advantage, and your life belongs to you, not to anyone else's corporate empire. The best partnerships are the ones where both people choose each other every day, not just once at an altar surrounded by people who think they know what's best for your future. If this story opened your eyes to something, if it made you think about your own relationships or someone you care about, share it. Share it with that friend who always asks permission for things she shouldn't need permission for. Share it with that sister who's getting smaller while her partner gets more comfortable. Turn on those notifications because stories like this, stories about recognizing your worth and refusing to accept less, these are the conversations that change lives. And if you stayed with me until the end, thank you. That tells me you're ready to choose yourself every single day in every single decision that matters. The world needs the fullest version of you. Don't let anyone convince you that love requires you to become smaller. You are worth more than any merger.